Hey everybody, do you remember the word association game? It's where you're given a word and then you think of the first thing that comes to your mind and you just shout it out. When I hear the word pride, my first thought, I was doing this yesterday, my first thought was pride comes before the fall. Now, I think it's because it's an old saying. You maybe heard it a dozen times. Maybe you've even found yourself saying it a few dozen times. It's a common phrase because it's generally accepted. We intuitively know that pride is a dangerous thing. So today we're going to be talking about the dangers of early pride in our Level Up Your Legacy live stream. We're so grateful that you joined in. We're walking through the book Ego is the Enemy chapter by chapter. And today's chapter is chapter 8, the danger of early pride. So I'm Paul McCosco and this is Bill Cox. We're both coaches with BillCoxCoaching.com. And we're so thankful that you tuned in today. Now, this is a discussion, right? So we'd love it for you to get involved. Now, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to leave it in the comment section and we'll be happy to connect with you if time allows. And so without further ado, let's just dive right in. I want to start our discussion today, Bill, with a quote that I think it helps us to zoom out and see the danger of pride as Ryan Holiday describes it. Listen to this. It says, pride blunts the very instrument we need to own in order to succeed, our mind. Our ability to learn, to adapt, to be flexible, to build relationships, all of this is dulled by pride. Now, we zoomed out, right? So let's zoom in and get a closer look in the hopes of understanding this better. What do you think about this, Bill? How does pride blunt your mind and ultimately your ability to succeed? What do you think?
Well, when I kind of thought about this, that was the quote that really stood out to me too when I was reading through the chapter. Such a great quote. For me, I just think pride warps and distorts reality. We always joke about the concept of living in a parallel universe, right? When somebody's living in a parallel universe, they're living in a world of their own making, right? It's like they're living in their own reality, but it's not reality. It's a universe that's not actually real. And I think there's a lot to pride, kind of going back to, when Ryan began to talk about this at the beginning of the book. It's that distorted or warped sense of self. And I always talk about this in one of my leadership courses when we talk about a Max Dupree quote where he says, the leader's first responsibility is to define reality. Well, why? Well, because reality is that which is that it's that thing around which the world functions, right? Mm-hmm. Reality is reality based on what? Based on any number of fixed laws that govern the world in which we live. And so when we live in conjunction with reality, we're living in harmony with nature's laws and nature's God. And so life works better when we live in harmony with what is real. But then when we start to give into pride, we start to kind of create this world that doesn't really exist. It's a world that's distorted and warped. And so we start to live in harmony with something that's not even in real. And so that becomes problematic.
Isn't it interesting that he chose the word blunt there, right? Like blunts your mind. I think of, the image of the dull axe, right? It's going to take a whole lot more wax and a whole lot more strength to make that tree fall if the axe is blunted. And, our mind, it dulls our mind. Like we aren't as sharp as we could be. We're not as resilient. We're not as able to react to what's going on around us when we have pride in the way. Like when I was thinking about this question, I got the image of driving down the road, right? And you're driving down the road and you're able to react to the things that are coming at you, the cars. But if you're staring at the mirror, right, looking at yourself all the time, Like, what are you going to do? You're going to hit something because your focus is on you instead of all the things happening around you. And I feel like that's such a cool picture of like what our ego does, right? It turns all of the spotlight onto ourselves. So we're not even paying attention to what's happening around. We're living, like you said, in a parallel universe, in a world that doesn't exist. That's all centered around ourselves.
We used to go to Waldemere, which is a park close to where we live. When Joel was a kid, we'd go up there every summer, and there's that part in the park where you can go in front of the funny mirrors.
Yeah.
And
my
they
wife
had
loves those.
Well, we'd always, I like, because I'm kind of a stocky person, I always liked to stand in the one that made me look skinny and tall,
Yes.
I always had a dream of playing in the NBA, and it's like, I'm going to stand in front of that mirror. I like the way that looks. And I think pride kind of does that. It's like standing in front of the funny mirror. It's a reflection of who I am, but it's a distorted reflection of who I am. It takes something that's got some element of truth to it. I think that's what's dangerous about it. There's some truth in there, but it's a distorted truth. And it's an exaggerated truth. And so therein lies the danger, that we just don't see and then live within the bounds of what is real. And that's why I think, a leader that I used to follow a lot years ago talked about the concept of appropriate smallness. And I think that's the kind of thing that keeps you grounded in front of not the funny mirror, but the real mirror, that shows you what you actually look like. It's not nearly as flattering, but it shows you the real you, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And then you can respond appropriately to what is actually real.
I love that. And it follows that train of thought of living in actual reality and not some distorted reality that we can create for ourselves. So let's follow that thought a little bit down the road. Ryan Holiday goes on to assert in page 77, he says this: what we cultivate less is how to protect ourselves against the validation and the gratification that will come our way if we show a promise. What we don't protect ourselves against are the people and things that make us feel good, or rather, too good. We must prepare for pride and kill it early, or it will kill what we aspire to. So, practically speaking, let's think about that for a second. How do we prepare for pride in order to protect ourselves from it?
I think you have to just know that it's always going to be something that you're going to deal with, because we all have that parts of ourself, that ego, that we want to see ourselves in the best possible light. We want to be the hero in our story. And even from the chapter, Ben Franklin was one of the examples, right? Somebody who was talented and smart and had a lot of ability, and how there was a gentleman in his life that helped to keep him grounded. And I think, to me, that's one of the ways that you prepare, is you surround yourself with the right people. This kind of probably sounds crass, but like, I wrote down people who know what the restroom smells like after you used it. Like, these are people who know you. Yeah. These are the people who know you without your makeup on.
Yeah, they don't put you on a pedestal.
They don't put you at a pedestal. They aren't caught up in the hype, and they're the people that love you for all of who you are. They see that balance you. It's not all bad. It's not all good. It's the kind truth. They see all of you, and they don't get caught up in all of that. And when you're around somebody like that, that you just kind of lose any need or desire to kind of put on a facade, because they kind of see right through that to the truth of who you are. And I just think there's a real healthy groundedness to surrounding yourself with people like that.
I love that. Surrounding yourself with those people who understand that you're not all you're cracked up to be. Like they see the good and the bad.
Yeah, and I think even we work a lot with leaders. This is something that I think is particularly a caution point for leaders. Positional leadership is kind of filled with landmines, pride landmines, just because of the public nature of it, the positional authority that comes with it, the idea when you're in that public positional platform, you're elevated, you can project an image or an aura that looks more impressive than it is, because you can kind of, through your authority, you can isolate yourself and insulate yourself a little bit and hold people at a distance. I never forget Chuck Swindoll, said years ago, you can impress people at a distance, but you impact people up close and impersonal and in person. And leaders get caught up in this, the temptation to kind of create and maintain an image that it isn't real. And a lot of times I say, the more you move up in an organization, the greater the tendency to isolate and insulate yourself from those very people that you really need to be speaking into your life on a regular basis to keep you grounded. So if you're a leader, the question then is, like, looking at your schedule, looking at your weekly rhythm, where can you point to in your calendar where you have regular checkpoints and check-ins with people who are giving you feedback, who are reflecting that actual mirror back to you and saying, hey, this is what you look like in this environment. This is what you sounded like here. Okay. Asking you questions, where can you point to blocks in your calendar where these people are speaking into your life and where you're listening and kind of staying grounded through that connection to them.
Okay, so I love that. And I think that's phenomenal. And I think that's something we all need to aspire to. But I'm thinking about that leader that you're describing, who's already insulated himself, who's already isolated himself from the people, who's already built an image that he feels like he needs to maintain. What's the first step toward being able to get that authentic with his team, or with at least one other person? Because a lot of times leaders like that you've just described, man, they might even struggle not having friends. Like, how do you get around someone that can be that authentic with you, even if you're so far from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a simple first step is to just identify 5 people in your life who you could say who would tell you the kind truth. These are people who they genuinely care about you. They're not trying to crush you. Okay, they really do care about you, but they'll also be honest with you. They're not afraid of you and your position, and they'll tell you what you need to hear, even if it's not what you want to hear. Identify those 5 people, and then just use one simple question and bring a notepad and ask them, what's it like to be on the other end of me?
Wow.
I just help me understand what's it like to experience me from your end. What's it like? The good, the bad, whatever comes to your mind. I just want you to give me the final 10% on that. If there's any part of that feels a little bit difficult to say to me because you're afraid I might become defensive, that's really what I need to hear. That's exactly what you need to tell me. That would be like one practical step I think you could take. The other one would be Hal Elrod, in his book, The Miracle Morning, has a letter that he crafted. I actually put it into like a coaching exercise where through this letter or email, you send it out. And it's basically the same thing, where you send it out to 5 to 10 friends who you really want honest feedback about what it's like to be your friend, and give give me your honest perspective on my strengths and my weaknesses. And if you have to prioritize that, focus on my weaknesses, because really you're going to give me a gift, a real gift that I need. And even though it may hurt a little bit, you're helping me get in touch with what? Well, you're getting me in touch with reality again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I need. I need a real accurate picture of what I look like in the mirror from someone else's perspective. And so, I mean, that I won't take the time to read that email now, but it's a really powerful exercise. Basically, a little bit more of a detailed exercise than the first example that I gave. I was just asking that simple question, and bring your notepad and just write, take notes. If you're not sure about the feedback that they're giving, say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. Or can you give me an example of what you mean when you say that? And really lean in. Try and make them flesh that out, take notes, and then shake their hand and say thank you when they're done, and hand them a $10 Dunkin' Donuts coffee card when they're done. Because no, seriously, because they just have done something that's greatly valuable to you, and it's a practical way of saying thank you for being willing to share these things with me.
Yeah, could you imagine if leaders at every level would just do that? Like the unleashing of humility across organizations would be incredible.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, you probably learn more from that 20-minute conversation than you would in 2 years of leading people,
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you did that exercise and then followed that up with getting back to those people with a list of action steps, here's what I heard you say, and here's what I'm going to do moving forward in response to that, that would change the whole trajectory of your life. And in many cases, it would save a lot of leaders' leadership future, because many leaders, as they continue to live detached from reality, with an inflated ego, giving into pride, they're just really sowing the seeds to their own future destruction of their influence and their leadership. That's why a lot of leaders don't last, because they don't stay grounded.
Well, we've got time for one more question. I think that leads perfectly into it. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self to keep from early pride? We understand this is a danger and a temptation that all of us face. So now, on this side of being 20, like, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Well, that is an excellent question.
I'll tell you while you're thinking. I'll give you an answer.
How would you answer that? I'm really curious.
I would say learn from anyone you can at every time that you can, everything that you possibly can. John Maxwell talks a lot about adopting this beginner's mindset. Never feel like you've arrived, because there's always more to learn. And I'll tell you, there's nothing that's kept me humble than never feeling good enough to always want to take the next step, to always know that there's someone bigger, better, brighter out there, that there's always something I haven't learned, something I haven't done, and to always adopt that beginner mindset would, I think, help me from making a lot of the mistakes I made in my 20s and 30s from thinking I was all that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great advice. I think I would really encourage, a 20-year-old leader to find someone that they respect as a leader, who kind of has those traits of being that someone who's further down the path than me, that is for me, that sees potential in me, but is also willing to be really straight with me with what they see in terms of areas of development, areas where I sabotage myself, areas where I live outside of the bounds of reality, and just having those regular checkpoints. And having that mentor who could kind of observe me, I think, in those spaces and places where I'm interacting with other people, where I'm exercising my leadership, and really be able to kind of feed back to that on a consistent basis. Boy, if you can find people like that, and really just build that into the structure of your life, I think, wow, it would really literally change the whole trajectory of your life. And it would help people at an early age realize the true value of building feedback into your life and not seeing it as something to be scared of, but something to really welcome. We presented a pretty large proposal to an organization in the area this past week, and it was kind of like full enterprise transformation from top to bottom. But that proposal started with working with the senior leaders, and at the end, one of the leaders said, "I'm really excited about this, but this really scares me." I'm like, "Well, what about this scares you?" He said, "Well, it's like one of the first times where I'm really going to be stepping into a coaching environment and kind of looking at myself for who I am and strengths and weaknesses as well, and really dealing with that and seeing that for what it is." And he said, "I'm excited about that, but I'm also kind of scared about that too." And I think, we can get to the place where, hey, life is not a pass-fail proposition. Life is a learn-grow proposition. And I'm best learning when I'm building into my life these mechanisms where I'm staying grounded and I'm seeing myself for who I really am. There's nothing healthier, there's nothing better, and there's nothing to be scared about that, because everybody sees this about us already.
Yeah,
Everybody
absolutely.
sees the truth. This is just about us finally coming to the party and joining the party.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Exactly, and seeing for ourselves what people already readily notice.
Wow. So, leader, if you're listening, it sounds like you've got some homework today. Find that person or that group of people that you can be authentic with, someone who will give you the gift of telling you what it's like to be on the other side of you, and really incorporate those feedback mechanisms into your leadership. And I know you will be a better leader for it. So we want to thank you again for tuning in. We're walking through the book, Ego is the Enemy, chapter by chapter. Today was chapter 8. We'll come back to you next week with a new chapter, and we're going to make a recording of this video available. So if you haven't yet signed up for our weekly email blast, you can sign up at billcoxcoaching.com, and we'll send you out a copy of this video and also some leadership tips and hints that'll help you improve your leadership as well. So we hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. Take a moment and tag someone in it, or share this post with someone who you may think it would be helpful. And until next time, we'll see you again on the Level Up Your Legacy podcast. So long.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks again for watching today's video. And before you go to the bottom of the screen, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you go to billcoxcoaching.com, sign up for our regular newsletter to help you move from success to significance and lead your life in such a way that you live a legacy. Have a great day.